Good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for May 5th, 2014. We'll begin with the special order calendar, decision items. Item number 1, A2319BZ, 1901 10th Avenue, Brooklyn.
The applicant provided revised drawings. Are there any questions or issues?
No.
Okay.
Item number 2, 15602BZ, 964 65th Street, Brooklyn.
Are there any questions or comments on this case? The applicant did provide us with additional material, including identifying the fence. They've shown the internal signage. And I guess we had asked them to put more details on the plan, so they provided that to us. Any questions? Okay.
Continued hearing items, item number 3, 19296BZ, 1832 1854 86th Street, Brooklyn.
All right, questions and comments? I know Commissioner Otley-Brown, you had a concern.
Yes, they did remove the barbed wire, and they replaced it with security cameras, and it actually looks quite nice.
Okay, good. There were other questions? Any issues? All right.
Item number 4, 17407BZ, 1935 Coney Island Avenue, Brooklyn.
All right, questions and comments? Yes.
I know they reduced the LED lighting, but I was still concerned about some of the, I believe it's foot candles adjacent to the residential, because the canopy will be sort of at the height of the second story. And between the pole light and the canopy lighting, I was wondering if they could reduce it to single digits. Or maybe he could explain how LED lighting might be a little bit different in terms of typical lighting, or how it could be shielded.
Okay. Other questions and comments? All right, I know that they clarified the hours in which they will pick up the garbage, 3 times a week from 7:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. Otherwise, the hours are 24/7. They provided us a letter from the MTA, which was in 2008, and I'm sure they'd have to update that. The reality is they're not going to really be able to reorganize this site according to plans unless they relocate the bus stop. So I'm confident that they'll have to do it in order for this application to work and for them to proceed. Any other questions? Nope. Okay.
New cases, item number 5, 245-32BZ, 12305 101 First Avenue, Queens.
All right. Questions and issues? Yes, Commissioner Otley-Brown.
They stated that they have only auto repair on site, and they removed the car painting and the driving schools across the street. But when you go to the site, they're still advertising auto body work and painting. So I don't know if it's the site next door or if it's still this site. If they need to clarify that.
Okay.
And there's tons of signs.
On this particular site or on the other site?
That's the question. It appears to be this site, unless my calculations are wrong.
Okay. Okay, we can ask them to clarify that. Yes.
They have removed some signage from an awning, but the awning frame is still there. They should remove that. And then the area where they're supposed to have parking for 4 cars, it seems to be consistently used for truck parking from the photos and when I went there. And it's adjacent to the residential, and there's really no screening to the residential.
Okay, why don't we ask them to, well, first of all, they should discontinue the truck parking, and we should look at a way in which they can screen the site from residential. Any other comments?
I know, just to echo both commissioners, when I was there, it seemed that there's a lot more signage than they've actually calculated. So.
All right. I think they should also just provide us clear photographs of the 2 frontages that are on the street and show us that, and then show us the drawings that show that it'll comply. Okay.
Item number 6, 61152BZ, 35-35 24th Street, Queens.
All right, questions and comments on this case? They're asking for an extension of term. I think it'd be helpful if they could just clarify to us a comment they made in the papers that that they intend to build the enlargement. As you know, the board granted an enlargement, I think, I don't know, over 10 years ago, I think in 2002. They never built that. Usually, it should be constructed within 4 years. It seems that if they actually want to do that, they'd have to come back to us, and it's not a part of their application as shown currently. Other questions or comments? Okay.
Item number 7, 32205BZ, 6969 Main Street, Queens.
The applicant's asking for for more time. I think they're asking for 4 more years, but we can clarify that. Any questions or comments?
That was my question. It wasn't clear as to exactly how much time they needed.
Okay. I think it'd be helpful if, in their statement, they just make it much more clear whether they have already been issued permits from DOB, whether construction has started, whether construction has completed, and they're only waiting for their certificate of occupancy. I thought it was very unclear. And for such a simple application, you'd think they'd be able to clearly state the facts so the board can act on this.
Item number 8, 17309BZ, 839 845 Broadway, Brooklyn.
All right, questions and comments on this case? The board may remember it. It's for an affordable housing project. The applicant has changed. It's no more POCO. I just want to clarify from the current owner that they intend to provide the affordable housing. It is a part of our resolution, so they should be doing that. Are there any questions? Right.
Appeals calendar, decision items. Item number 9, 140 and 14111A, 3069-17, 38th Avenue, Queens.
Are there any questions? We did receive a letter from Department of Buildings speaking to the issue of valid permits. I know, Commissioner Montanez, you had some concerns about that because
Right.
the project had changed since.
Yes, so
the
they
previous
ordered it, and they said everything is legal.
Okay, good.
Item number 10 to 12313A, 86 Bedford Street, Manhattan.
We've received a letter withdrawing this application. As you know, from the letter, DOB has rescinded the stop work order and reissued the permit, so the case that's actually moot, but they've withdrawn the application.
Continued hearing items, item number 11, 110-13A, 120 President Street, Brooklyn.
The applicants asked for an adjournment. They're working with the Department of Buildings, and I believe they've scheduled a meeting for May 8th this week.
New cases, item number 12, 30413A, 517, 519 West 19th Street, Manhattan.
Does the board have any concerns if we call all 3 cases together? The issues are exactly the same. In fact, I would say that this could have been packaged as one application since a lot of the material has been repeated. However, I think for our purposes over here, we can call out the 3 together, and at tomorrow's hearing, unless the applicant has a specific issue with that, we can call all 3 applications together at the hearing as well.
Item number 13 and number 14, 31213A and 31313A, 521, 5 West 19th Street, and 531 West 19th Street.
This application is related to 3 buildings on West 19th Street. 2 of the buildings have a certificate of occupancy for art sales. The third one has it for art gallery. The issues at least appear very similar for all 3 cases. The appellant is asking us to reverse the Department of Buildings determination regarding these 3 spaces, that they're gallery use, and as gallery use, they're required under the building code to be considered as an F3 assembly, which requires, or a place of assembly, and there are certain requirements associated with that, including getting a certificate of operations, and as a part of that, and what they've noted is it would require them to do calculation on occupancy to determine the number of egress. The applicant is basically saying that Zwerner Galleries is actually art sales and should be considered as retail use and under the building code as mercantile. I don't know what to say. It seems that the buildings department's correct on this. I thought the buildings department's arguments were very persuasive. If you go to the website, it says that it's a commercial art gallery. It lists all the exhibitions that they had in the past and are planning to have them in the future. And for all practical purposes, it seems no different from other gallery spaces in West Chelsea. I think the building code calls it galleries. They identify that as uses that have require an assembly or should be considered as assembly. And you look at and calculate the occupancy based on the building code requirements, which requires you to take a different factor and calculate the square footage and the number of people who would be occupying the space. The appellant has argued in all three cases that this is really a high-end retail store. However, I don't believe they've given us any real evidence that it functions as such, just by telling us that over the 3 years, so many art sales were made or art books were sold with these number of patrons. I don't think really satisfies, at least in my mind, persuades me that this is somehow retail space. Commissioners, what do you think?
I would agree. I mean, for me, it was very compelling evidence that this is actually a commercial gallery. That when you even call their number, they simply say that they're open between, this hour and that hour. And then if you want an appointment, you can make arrangements for it. But it doesn't say only, you can only come by appointment, which I think is common for many art galleries. So I was not persuaded by their argument that they only have appointments and that they only sell to, particular customers sort of one at a time. So, I mean, I think that this is a commercial establishment, and I think the preponderance of the evidence is such that it is a commercial gallery.
All right, other comments? Yes.
I also was not convinced by the appellant's argument that they were high-end retail, because I believe that all galleries have sales portion in their business model. That's what they do. They show art in the hope that people will come buy it. And so I don't see this as being any different from any other gallery.
All right, yes.
Also, in terms of the occupancy, they claimed that they only had about 5 to 10 people as the highest occupancy. That might be their typical occupancy on a regular weekday, but I'm sure they hold openings and public events and possibly even rent out the space for private parties.
I agree. I had a chance to look at a few galleries on West 19th Street, West 20th Street, and 21st Street, and I looked up the C of Os, and so you have galleries, you have Gallery Chukin, you have the Gallery Bartolami, you have Jack Shaman Gallery, you have, let's see, so I had a whole list of them, like 9, 10 of them. You have David Werner, which is on 20th Street. You have Gagosian Gallery, you have Gladstone, you have Paula Cooper. If you go to the Cs of O of all these galleries, they all are listed as F3 occupancy and they're as galleries. So I think the appellant would really have to provide us with a compelling argument why this space should be treated differently from any of the others. It seems that the activities are very similar. Maybe they have a compelling reason. It's not in the record as yet. And I think it would also be helpful if they explain to us what the interrelationships with these 3 buildings are, because I think 2 of them are connected as well. So it seems to me it's one of those cases, if you look at the photographs, if you look at the building, it seems like it's a gallery. And I think DOB's position was, to me, persuasive about how the code functions. I think they do look at the more restrictive type of use and the specific type of use and calculate the occupancy. I think the concerns of the building code are to protect people, and in the event that you have an occupancy which is greater than 75, that you have the proper exits for people to leave the building. So we can ask the appellant to look at this. I think they should work with the buildings department to, in fact, meet the exit or egress requirements. And in fact, under those circumstances, they should be able to modify the Cs of O of 2 of them and get it notified or noted as gallery space. And that would be able to correct the certificates of occupancy. As you know, the Buildings Department has noted that otherwise they would like to come to the board and seek a modification of the Cs of O that have been issued in error. All right.
Decision, zoning calendar, decision items, item number 1, 303-12BZ, 11106, 11108, Utica Avenue, Brooklyn.
All right, we'll be able to vote this out. The applicant has actually provided some attenuation for air quality, and that has been noted on the drawings.
Item number 2, 10313BZ, 81 Jefferson Street, Brooklyn.
Information that DEP had requested has been provided to them, but they do require several weeks to review it, so we will defer the decision.
Item number 3, 26913BZ, 110 West 73rd Street, Manhattan.
Any concerns with this? We talked about a term, and so the resolution notes that the term is for 5 years.
Item number 4, 27313BZ, 321 East 68th Street, Manhattan.
We will defer the decision. We're still waiting for DEP sign-off.
Item number 5, 305-13BZ, 30-50 Whitestone Expressway, Queens.
You provided revised drawings. Are there any issues? Okay.
Item number 6, 318-13BZ, 74 Grand Street, Manhattan.
Any issues with this? They provided us with revised drawings, and we have received sign-off from DEP. There'll be conditions in the resolution regarding the hazardous materials remediation.
Continued hearing items. Item number 7, 124-13BZ, 95 Grattan Street, Brooklyn.
The applicant's asked for an adjournment.
Item number 8, 125-1397 Grattan Street.
The applicant's asked for an adjournment for this case as well.
Item number 9, 178-13BZ, 21-41 Mott Avenue, Queens.
All right, questions and comments? Commissioner Martinez, I think you had raised some concerns.
Right, they revised their signage analysis, but they don't have details of all the signs, if they could provide that to comply, to show what's in the signage analysis, and it includes everything.
Okay, any other questions? They did show the screening and the landscaping. Okay.
Item number 10, 250-13BZ, 3555 White Plains Road, Bronx.
The applicant's asked for an adjournment.
Item number 11, 254-13BZ, 2881 Nostrand Avenue, Brooklyn.
The applicant's asked for an adjournment.
Item number 12, 286-13BZ, 2904 Voorhees Avenue, Brooklyn.
All right, I still have a few concerns about this case, and I'd just like to talk about the FAR waiver that they're requesting. We had asked them last time to show to us that this FAR of 1.1 is justified, and in doing that, they should look at buildings or other homes in the surrounding area and note to us what the square footage is and what the FARs are, in order to make a compelling case that you need to have a home of a certain size, in this case about 1,900 square feet, and that would put it at par with other buildings in the surrounding area. We had asked them to not limit them to the corner lot study and look at interior lots as well. And we received an analysis which I think did not get to the point where they looked at all kinds of sizes of homes and footprints. I thought it was overcomplicated. I don't think it got to the point and spoke to the issue of FAR at all. And I'd like the applicant to go back and justify this additional square footage. If you have a home which is under what is allowed in the district, it's 1,350 square feet. They've asked for 1,900. It results in a building which includes an extension into the front, and that has the effect of actually blocking light and air to the adjacent building. As you know, they're asking to build on the lot line, which doesn't give any side yard relief. So it has an actual impact on the adjacent buildings, and I think from that perspective, they really need to look at it both in the context of livability as well as in the context of their C finding. All right, I know there were other issues as well. Commissioner Hinkson?
Yes, I think it's on P1, they show that there's an existing fence that appears to be on the sidewalk. I don't think we want to be approving something that's on a public sidewalk, so maybe they can remove that or just at least not call attention to it. And it's interesting, I'd like to know what it is actually, whether they've sort of taken a portion of the sidewalk. And also, I'm not necessarily on board with how they've provided their parking. in the front yard there. It's parallel to the front of the house, and it just seems that they could probably park well enough in that dead-end side street there. But to sort of bifurcate their property with the cars, I don't think is a good idea.
Right, it seems to me currently they don't have parking on the side, and if they do, maybe they can clarify that to us. So if there's no parking there today, I don't think the enlargement of this building is going to trigger a parking requirement, so they could just park wherever they park right now. I know, it looks very awkward, and it's also probably unsightly. Parking's not supposed to be in the front yard, and even though they have a fairly wide front yard, I think it's actually not an appropriate thing to show. Any other comments? All right.
Item number 310-13BZ, 459 East 149th Street, the Bronx.
All right. I would have to say one thing about the set of papers and this case. I actually think the case can be made fairly easily. However, I think their papers are confusing and do not get to the point. At the last hearing, I think the board actually laid out a few arguments that they should look at in order to make their A finding. And I think they've not really spoken to that. They did address certain aspects of it, but what was most confusing is that they said that their as of right was office space on the entire floor. I don't think that's the as of right. The as of right is the school without having a portion in the district where it's not allowed, which is the M11 district. And they should look and explain to us why that doesn't work. They did talk about the fact that it compromises the egress. They should say that again, and also they lose other space and also justify that space. Yes, Commissioner Otley-Brown, I know you, at the last hearing, you had concerns about the A findings.
Right, I did. First of all, I talked about the absence of a program, which I was happy to see that they did fill in the program information. But, and it seems to me like it should be fairly easy to make this case, and they also, they hinted at it, actually. They talked about needing the regularity of
Right.
the floor plate so they can have perfectly aligned classrooms that are rectangular in shape. Well, then actually the next step for that would be that if they had to put the egress and the faculty lounge into that space, it would disalign the classrooms and make it so that they were irregular sizes and not optimal for teaching. I think that's the direction that they need to go.
I agree, and
then
they
it
should
would
show
be
that.
understandable.
And then they should show that in the as-of-right plans, which now is shown as office space. All right, other questions and comments? Okay.
New cases, item number 14-277-13BZ, 1769 Fort George Hill, Manhattan.
Okay, this is a case by the applicants, which is Sobro. We've seen some of their cases before. They're a affordable housing provider. They're looking for additional FAR on the site and other waivers to height and setback and rear yard parking and density in order to allow the proposed development of 125 affordable units. I think one thing is pretty clear, that this site is very unique. It's very unique in its configuration, both incredibly long and narrow. It has unique in its slope, where there's a drop of, I think, about 30 feet from one end of the site to the other. And it's further constrained by being adjacent to the MTA site, where you have the trains that stop there as their terminal. Questions and comments?
I think it's highly constrained. I did not have any issue with that. The only question that I think I really had was the use of the MTA site adjacent to the property. I think there's a substation there, so if they could maybe speak to if there are any additional protections, not only during construction, but maybe in the construction of the building itself that's required because of the use next door.
Okay. Commissioner Otley-Brown?
Yeah, I had a question for clarification concerning the premium costs. it lists in the premium costs the cellar foundation, interior concrete walls, first floor perimeter, interior and elevator concrete walls, first and second floor concrete slab, and it's all included in the premium costs. But they don't clarify whether or not that's the total cost, or is it just the differential for the hardship? And if they can just talk about that, that would be great, because if it's the total cost, it needs to be whittled down. And if you whittle it down, then the cost per unit actually might be more reasonable. We don't know. We'd have to wait and see.
Okay, Commissioner Martinez?
Right, I was, just want to, if they could clarify that they've done a structural analysis on the building, because it's a few hundred feet long by maybe around 40-something feet wide on a slope. Seems that, I almost question their ability to build this on a spread footing without more secure anchoring to
Okay.
the subsurface. And they didn't give us any information regarding the unit sizes and breakdown between the three scenarios they asked us to look at. And I just looked at the gross square footage, and it seemed that the gross square footage per dwelling unit for the as of right was higher than the other two scenarios, and would, make it a lower number of dwelling units, which would increase the hardship per dwelling unit. So
Okay,
we want to make sure we're dealing with apples and apples.
okay. I know Commissioner Otley Brown, you also had a question about the unit mix and,
Yes, the community actually requested that there be more large apartments to accommodate the families in the neighborhood. And when you look at their financial information about the financing requirements, it shows that HDC has a financing plan based on the development not going over their limits in cost per unit and also expenses per unit.
Right.
And as it stands right now, it seems as if they're somewhat underneath that limit. And I was wondering if they could perhaps add some larger apartments and change the mix slightly, if it would still, if they could do that and maybe raise the cost per unit and raise the maintenance per unit, but still stay underneath the HDC limits. Is that a possibility?
okay, so it means that they look at redefining their unit mix.
Right.
Okay. I just want to make a couple of comments on the scale of this project, and I think it'd be helpful if the applicant speaks to this as well. As you know, they're asking for an overall project which is about 7.6 FAR, 7.26 FAR, I think, 7.25, 7.26 FAR. The district allows 6.5 FAR as a mixed building for community facility and for residential. And while their mix is somewhat different, I think we should note that, in fact, the district does contemplate buildings at about 6.5 FAR. So they're slightly higher than that. They've gone up to 7.25. That's one issue. The second issue is that this is an R72 district, which is a height factor zone, but you could also do quality housing. If you look at the height factor regulations, they encourage buildings to be taller and thinner, and you can go up to about 14 stories at a height factor of 14 and have actually maximize your FAR at 3.4. What the applicant has done is they've really compared their as-of-right building and their proposal under the quality housing rules, which allows you to go to 4 FAR, but then you have a height limit of 80 feet. But I think, again, the board should be aware that the district normally does allow buildings that reach heights that are similar to what this building is. And you see that more so on larger sites where you have a lot of open space. This site actually doesn't lend itself to a height factor zoning, but it's not surprising that you do see on some of the larger lots, as they've noted, where you have buildings that actually are much taller. So you have a portion of the neighborhood which is lower, more small scale. Those buildings were built in the earlier part of the century. They tend to be high lot coverage and about 6 stories. And then you have some of the buildings that are more in the towers of the park kind of format, and those tend to be, well, I guess they're between 10 and 21 stories. And this site is sort of uniquely placed because it really is an edge condition. I think if you had a site like this, which was surrounded by the smaller 6- and 7-story buildings, it would really stand out. But since it is at an edge, I think that this height and density can really be carried. by the location. Do the board board members have concerns about otherwise the scale of this project? All right. I just had one other question for the applicant, and just in terms of their building form. It is a very unusual site. They're asking for a rear yard waiver from 15 to 10 feet because of the shallow depth. And since the adjacent site is an MTA site, which is never really going to be built upon, I was wondering if they ever contemplated trying to get a light and air easement on the lot line, and as a result of that, be able to have a larger floor plate. It may, in fact, reduce some of the inefficiencies of the floor plate that they have right now, which tends to be a single corridor layout. And as a result of that, you may be able to actually have a lower building. So I'd like them to at least explain to us if that's a possible consideration in terms of bringing the height of the building down, only because, of course, people in the neighborhood have been concerned about the height. All right.
Item number 15, 279-13BZ, 218-222 West 35th Street, Manhattan.
All right, questions and comments on this case? All right, there's just a few things that I think the applicant should clarify to us. There's been some confusion regarding the zoning lot itself. Part of their papers show just a portion of the site. Other parts show a larger site, which is a through lot site that goes from 34th to 35th Street. As a result of that, it's just not clear. I think they should establish what the zoning lot is and speak to the issues of that in their papers and their zoning analysis and the authorization of the site before us, in the drawings and in the notification requirements as well. They should do it now because it may require going for another hearing as a result of that. But substantively speaking, are there any concerns with this particular gym at this location? It is in a manufacturing district. Okay.
Item number 16, 294-13BZ, 220 Lafayette Street, Manhattan.
All right, questions and comments on this case? Yes.
My questions have to do with the financials, so
All
I
right.
don't know if you're ready for that yet.
All right, well, let's go back, let's do the A finding first. They've talked about the fact that the site is shallow and that the building is obsolete and underbuilt. As you know, they're asking for a change of use as well as the enlargement of that use. The site is currently 2.6 FAR, and it's approximately 1,875 square feet. And I think my concern is that the issues with the site are not really the depth of the site as much as the floor plate size. And I think as a result of that, they really should do an analysis of other sites and compare themselves to small sites. The building's already built. They're planning to use that building. It's already non-complying in terms of the rear yard on the second floor. So it's unclear how the shallow lot really constrains them at one level. So if they could take a look at that. In terms of the obsolescence of the building, they've talked about it being underbuilt, and they've actually talked about the floor plates in that context, that they're small and narrow and they don't lend themselves to the kinds of uses that are allowed under this district. Are there concerns about the A finding? Okay, why don't we move to the B finding?
Okay, I have questions about the site value. I think that the site value is possibly too high, and based on a couple of indicators. Number one, it's combined. It's based on the land value as well as the depreciated building value. So we'll start with the land value. The land value as vacant land is based on sites in the M1-5B district, and that's fine. However, some of those sites actually have buildings on them. And so, you know, the buildings, one can say, could be obsolete for reuse, but however, there was nothing done to adjust downward to take the building out of the value. And so you have vacant land that's actually going to be a higher price because it's based on land that's improved. And that also has an effect on the second part of the site value, which has to do with the depreciated building, because if you're already valuing your land with an obsolete building on it, I don't understand why you're then adding another obsolete building onto the site value. So now that's one question. The second question has to do in the way in which they calculated the age and then the value of the depreciated building. I understand that the building is 53 years old and that because it's in an urban area. It does have an extended life over 100 years, and so they went to the ORP schedule in order to calculate the remaining life. And they've calculated the remaining life at 65.81%, as opposed to 53 years old, there would be, I believe, 47% of remaining life. However, if the whole argument here is that the building is obsolete for manufacturing, which is the as-of-right use in terms of not having a freight elevator and small floor plates and no loading zone, then perhaps this building is considered obsolete and should therefore be actually effectively older than it actually is because it has functional obsolescence. So that's my question there. And if you adjust both of those, then the site value should come down. I also have a question about the condominium sales. It seems like they're using actual apartment sales in larger buildings to figure out what the price would be for a townhome. And I don't think that's appropriate because there is a premium on townhouse sales because you've got, you know, one family living in the entire building, and that's far more valuable than just being an apartment dweller in a larger building. Also, there's outdoor space in this townhome that isn't being accounted for with the apartment sales in the buildings because the buildings don't look as if they have any outdoor space. And so I think that what they need to do is redo the comparables based on actual townhomes, even if they have to adjust down for the quality of the building or the condition that it's in.
Okay. I think this relates to then what is the minimum variance on the site. And as you know, they've asked for an enlargement as well. And it's not clear to me that they really need that enlargement. Even without the enlargement, you have a fairly nice-sized home. I think they should also just clarify whether they're asking for ground floor retail as a part of their application. They seem to express it as we are asking for a variance to clarify or to what was the word? Formalize on their certificate of occupancy retail use. Now, that's a very garbled way of saying either you're asking for the waiver or you're not. If you're asking for the waiver for retail, then I don't think you should keep stating in your papers that this is a pre-existing legal use. And also, the analysis for the as-of-right cases should look at showrooms or something else and not retail. Currently, they're all shown as retail. So, or if the retail is actually a pre-existing non-conforming use, then don't muddle up the papers by saying that you want to formalize it on the CFO. I think it's unnecessary and they shouldn't do that. So that was my comment about clarifying the waivers itself. Yes.
No, I too had a question of why expand the building. I don't think they really explained why a single-family residence could not exist in 2 floors as opposed to having to have 3 floors. Also, could they expand a little bit on why the joint work living quarters doesn't work? I think they simply just give us a number as to what the square footage price is on that, and they don't really give us any, backup for it. So I would be interested to know why they can't make that work.
Okay. Other comments? All right.
Item number 7, 331-13BZ, 2005 86th Street, Brooklyn.
All right, questions and comments?
I have one.
Yes.
Is this actually operating? Because it seems open, the doors are open, and there's advertisement in the windows talking about pre-opening registration sales. So there is something going on in there. They can clarify that.
Okay. Any other questions on this case?
Item number 18.
I just have one
Sorry.
comment. If they could just speak to the community board's conditions, they had concerns about whether the entrance on 85th Street should be used or not. If they could just speak to that, and it'd be helpful if they provide photographs of all the frontages on which the site rests, instead of just photographs of 86th Street. Okay.
No?
Okay. Yes.
Item number 18, 3-14BZ, 12-22 East 89th Street, Manhattan.
All right, this is a case for an application to enlarge St. David's School on East 89th Street. As you know, they've said in their papers that they want to consolidate their school campus to one site, which is the one on 89th Street. I think that there, if you look at the building and the plans, I think you can make a case that there's practical difficulties in adapting these buildings that remain are within the historic district to accommodate the school and its enlargement. So on the issue of practical difficulty, I think they made a case. As you know, as a school, the board gives deference based on programmatic needs as well. I think that's where the applicant hasn't really made a case, except very broadly speaking, and I think they want the board to take the leap and acknowledge and accept that the proposal is in fact their programmatic need. I think what would be much better is to really explain to us what the school is today in terms of its program space, its enrollment, and its deficiencies, and then explain to us why the as-of-right wouldn't work, and then why the proposal will work, and also explain then why the lesser variance wouldn't work. If you read the papers, the way it's written is that you have an existing building, and the proposal will add 3,600 square feet approximately. But the school is actually enlarging from 60,000 square feet to 97,000 square feet, so close to 40,000 square feet. I had to hunt. I found it only in the drawings, and that too in the fine print under the existing zoning. That is where I found, I think, a very critical and important statement to make. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, having this additional 40,000 square feet is a problem. I think they just need to explain what that 40,000 square feet does. I think for most part, it actually accommodates the physical educational facility or use, which was otherwise off-site. But it may also result in other kinds of program spaces that we're not aware of. And I think it becomes much more apparent, or the lack of this information becomes much more apparent when you look at the lesser variance, which we asked for, where you don't set, or you don't encroach into the rear yard right now. Currently, they have a rear yard of 4.2 feet, and they're going up to the lot line. And if you look at the result of that, it's very unclear why that proposal doesn't work. Commissioner Montanez, I know you had some concerns.
Right, I wasn't convinced in terms of programmatic needs. It seems the auditorium, the gym is the same size, only the auditorium is really affected, and it reduces the number of seats by around 30, but I didn't feel like they really justified, incursion into the rear yard.
Right, it's not clear. It's from 260, the occupancy under their proposal is 290, it becomes 260. I don't think that really speaks to why that space is absolutely critical. And the only way to do that is to understand the spatial needs of this institution. Similarly, on some of the other floors, there's a loss of occupancy in, I think, the art room or the music room. I'm not sure why that doesn't allow them to fulfill their need, programmatic need. What I think, as you noticed or observed, is that the lesser variance actually doesn't take away any functional space. It just reduces the occupancy in a few spaces. And really, it only does it on the auditorium and maybe a couple of classrooms or these music and art rooms. The major spaces that they talked about, which was the gymnasium and I guess there's a smaller gymnasium and the one at the roof level, both actually remain intact. I think from a neighborhood character perspective, I think they should really look to see whether they can make the lesser variance work. I think it's onerous to go right to the lot line, and especially if the compromise of not having maybe the full occupancy that they need actually results in a better compromise with the adjacent building. Other comments or questions, Dara?
No.
Okay. Just on, does anybody have questions on the letter that we received from the adjacent residential building and the opposition papers? Okay, I was just not persuaded by some of the arguments they made. It seems they made two broad arguments which had to do with the practical difficulties on the site. They said that this is self-created, which is the irregularity of the building self-created because they merge these lots together. And then they said that since the Graham House is going to be significantly reconstructed, one cannot rest on the existing non-compliances as a way of arguing their case. That may be the case, but I think the board recognizes that the programmatic needs for an institution, an educational institution in particular, can be itself just the A finding. And I think the second issue about the reconstruction of Graham House and the existing non-compliances, it's really a technical issue with DOB. And the way it's written is that if you are allowed to demolish a certain amount of square footage within a non-complying building and recapture that, and they're just following that rule. I don't think, I think they meet that DOB requirement. So I was not persuaded by that issue either. I do question the program part, and I think we will ask the applicants to explain that more fully to us. I understand that they're making a presentation, so during that presentation, it'd be helpful if they speak to this issue specifically. Okay.
Item number 19, 7-14BC, 1380 Rockaway Parkway, Brooklyn.
All right, questions and comments?
Just that they're saying they're waiving the parking requirement, but there's a parking lot to the rear. And I was just wondering if that's available for the PCE.
All right, they should explain that to us. The parking in the rear is still in the residential district. I don't think it's affected by the rezoning. They had a term on it, which expired a long time ago. I know they noted to us that parking is on the C of O for the commercial use. The board had granted that parking, I guess, a long time ago, but I believe in the 70s it was, the grant expired. So yes, we should clarify whether that is a part of the lot still, and if it is, I think it really does require them to reinstate the board's previous grant, because otherwise there's no basis for us to continue to allow them to have parking over there. Okay.
This concludes the executive session for May 5th, 2014.